In 1692, a man named Vincenzo was dragged from his home in Venice. Feverish, coughing blood, he knew exactly where they were taking him. To Poveglia, the island of death. Here, he was thrown onto a pile of bodies, half alive, half dead. To the city, he was no longer a man, just another number in a sea of corpses. And Vincenzo was not alone. Tens of thousands would meet the same fate on this island. Abandoned, forgotten, erased from history. They say the very soul here is made of ash and bones. Crops grow from graves, and even today, the island remains sealed, forbidden to all. But why did Venice need such a place? And how did it become one of the darkest chapters in Italy's past? Poveglia, the small island in the Venetian lagoon, was never meant to be famous. It belonged to the Republic of Venice, one of the wealthiest and most powerful maritime city-states in history. Venice's wealth came from trade across the Mediterranean. After the fall of Constantinople in 1204, during the Fourth Crusade, Italian city-states like Genoa and Venice seized the opportunity to expand their empires, capturing strategic ports and islands in Greece and even establishing footholds in Crimea. This expansion allowed Venice to dominate Mediterranean trade routes and extend its influence as far as the Black Sea. But Venice's success came at a deadly cost. Trade meant interaction with countless nations and cultures, and sometimes with deadly diseases. The danger came from the east. By the 13th century, the Mongol Empire had united under Genghis Khan, expanding rapidly across Asia into Europe. Their conquests brought both armies and something far more sinister: disease. In 1346, the Mongols had laid siege to the Genoese trade post of Kaffa. Mongolian soldiers began dying from an unknown disease. According to chronicles, the Mongol army, instead of retreating, began catapulting their dead bodies infected with this unknown plague over the fortress walls, spreading sickness to the town. Within weeks, Kaffa fell. Survivors fled carrying the deceased westward across Europe. And this incident is now known as one of the earliest biological warfares in history. By 1347, the disease reached Italy. It was highly contagious, spreading faster than anyone could contain. At the time, it was simply called the Great Pestilence. Today, we know it as the Black Death. It killed tens of millions of people across Europe in just a few years, wiping out nearly half of Venice's population. It was in this era that Vincenzo lived. A young man from Venice, he watched as friends, neighbors, and family fell sick. Food became scarce. Fear gripped the city. Venice's leader needed a solution, and fast. To protect the surviving population, they turned to isolation. Islands like Poveglia were designated as quarantine zones, a place to send the sick, the exposed, and sometimes those simply feared to be carriers of disease. Ships arriving in the lagoon had to wait offshore for 40 days. 40 giorni, before anyone could enter the city. It was one of the earliest examples of organized quarantine in history, and for Vincenzo, that meant being taken to Poveglia, the island of death, a place where survival was a cruel lottery, and most never returned. Venice survived the Black Death, but the fear never left. The city rebuilt its empire of trade. Ships filled with silk, spices, and gold once again filled its ports. But every ship that arrived could also carry death. To protect itself, Venice turned its lagoon into a weapon against disease. Small islands became quarantine stations, lazarettos. The sick were sent away for 40 days. If they lived, they could return. If not, they joined the thousands buried underneath the soil. Poveglia was one of the smallest islands, yet its name carried the greatest fear. Even centuries later, the people of Venice whispered it. The Island of Death, they called it. And when the plagues ended, no one wanted to go near it. In 1797, Napoleon's armies marched through the lagoon. The Venetian Republic, after 1,000 years, fell. And with it, the island was forgotten. Again, left to the ghosts of the past. After the defeat of Napoleon, Venice was annexed by Austria. Under Austrian rule, Pavelia's purpose twisted once more. The plague was gone, but the fear of the unwanted remained. The mentally ill, the poor, the outcasts, those who society didn't understand, were sent here. Officially, it was called a psychiatric hospital. Unofficially, it was a place of torment. Patients were restrained, isolated, forgotten. Some say the doctors performed experiments, cutting, drilling, burning in the name of science. One story speaks of a doctor who worked in the asylum during the early 1900s. Obsessed with curing madness, he began experimenting on his patients. When the guilt or the voices became too much, he climbed to the bell tower and jumped. They say he survived the fall, but was dragged away by something in the mist. His body was never found. Since then, no one has lived on the island for long. In the years that followed, Pavelia was abandoned. The hospital closed in 1968. Buildings were left to rot, walls overtaken by vines, floors by silence. Even fishermen refused to cast their nets near its shores, afraid what might rise to the surface. Today, Pavelia is off limits. Technically, it's illegal to enter, yet explorers still come, drawn by morbid curiosity. They speak of cold winds in sealed rooms, of whispers in languages they don't understand, of footsteps following them through the walls. The island sits just a few kilometers from Venice, close enough that tourists can see its outline from the Lido on a clear day. Yet, few ever speak of it. The Italian government officially forbids entry, citing safety concerns, crumbling walls, unstable ground, asbestos. The reasons are practical. The soil of Pavelia is said to be half ash, half earth. The remains of the plague pits, the asylum's dead, the unburied. And perhaps that is what truly haunts it. Not ghosts, but history itself. And so the island remains, empty, silent, waiting. And perhaps in the future, under a different regime, it might even be reopened.